Posted by you/League Hoof. Serious, what's the closest you ever came to a horrible death? I have a heart problem, that in Portuguese is called rhythmia. I can't translate this. It is a small deformity on my heart that starts pounding too fast whenever I make too much effort. Sometimes I would get small heart attacks, but we never cared much because they were small and went away as fast as they came. Someday, though, I woke up at 5 a.m. with my heart racing again, and I told my mom. Since it happened before, she told me to go to sleep and it would stop. It did, but that's not where it ends. She took me to school at 7 a.m., and the moment I stepped in class, my heart started pounding fast again. I asked my first class teacher to go to the infirmary. I spent 2 hours in there while they checked up everything, and they decided to take me to the hospital. My mom had just laid down to sleep when they called her, which resulted in her rushing to the school with her pajamas on. My heart didn't stop racing at any time. They took me and my pajama mom to the hospital by bus, and I stayed there until 2 p.m. with a few tubes attached to me, and my heart was beating about more than 200 times per minute, as far as I remember. Me and mom lived with my grandma, so if she knew what was going on, she'd have a heart attack herself and die, so we didn't tell her the situation until it was over. Nowadays, I have to take pills every night to prevent heart attacks. Once I turn 18, I will have to make surgery to remove the deformity so I can live a normal life. Can't wait. I was playing on ice with a really fat friend of mine. I was 9. We knew we weren't allowed to play there, because it's really dangerous, but we still did. Anyway, that friend was an utter idiot. He started smashing the ice with a hammer, to make holes for the ducks, and then of course the ice broke and he fell into the water. He was so heavy that every time he tried to get back on the ice, it would break. At some point he got stuck beneath the ice. I am this really lanky thin 9-year-old girl, so pulling him up in general was difficult. No one else beside me and 2 friends who were just yelling and screaming from the side of the river were there. So my dumbass decides to grab the hammer, and I start smashing that ice so it breaks. Then I attempt to pull him back on the ice, but he is so heavy that he pulls me half underwater as well. After about 10 minutes of both of us half drowning in the ice water, I managed to pull him onto the land. He didn't even thank me and ran off crying to his own house. I waited till my clothes were dry and never told my family anything happened. When next day at school my mom heard my friend had to go to the hospital because of hypothermia, I pretended not to know. Lol. Lesson learned: don't try to break ice for the ducks without adult supervision, and not while you're on the ice. SMH. My tonsils tried to kill me when I was a teenager. It started with the worst sore throat you can imagine and then progressed to feeling so fatigued I had trouble walking. I would wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, literally like someone threw a bucket of water on me, and shaking terribly. As it progressed I had vivid hallucinations and threw up all night. I felt immediately better after the tonsils were removed, but I lost 20 to 30 pounds and my hair started falling out after I recovered. A doctor told me it was because when you're that sick your body shuts down non-essential functions like growing hair. I looked a little funny when it started growing back. I worked at a pet store when I was in my 20s. My friend and I were in charge of ordering marine fish since we were both crazy about aquariums and all things saltwater. We received a bunch of coral and live rock. We were handling it and moving it around, putting it into the tanks, and after I set one down, a particularly amazing piece that I'd been looking at closely, a blue ringed octopus crawled out and nearly latched onto me. We both knew exactly what it was, and we just looked at each other speechless. For the curious, https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/blue-ringed_octopus. Sat down on a bench to have a smoke after asking a friend who had hooked up with a random if it was okay if I get the first taxi, as I was on my own. First taxi spotted, they jumped in and left me after a night out. BF troubles at the time, so thought it was sensible to walk just into a park and sit on a seat just inside to contemplate him. BF, being an asshole. Random guy came and tried to talk to me, got a weird vibe as he wouldn't take no for an answer. He started hitting me, strangling me and dragged me into the bushes. Had a weird out-of-body experience, so guessed I was dying. Hadn't realized I had been screaming. People in houses nearby heard me and phoned the police. Group of 5 random men heard me as they were coming home and pulled him off me. He tells them I was his GF and we were having a fight. I tell them I have never seen him before. He tries to run, they accidentally trip him many times, police arrive, I end up naked in the police station taking my clothes off for evidence and getting photographed. Then the coroner's office the next day after the police took me back to the scene and collect stuff that had fallen out of my pockets during the struggle, told by the extent of petechiae that I was 20 seconds away from death. Always pisses me off watching movies where people are strangled. I looked like a beetroot, my entire face was purple with burst blood vessels, my eyes were completely bloodshot, bruised finger marks all over my neck. He was a newly married naval officer with a 9-month-old child. He got dishonorably discharged, lost his pension and got sent to Colchester. I had to sit with him and his family while waiting to go into court. Only time I have fainted in my life in the witness box. Fucked up my A-levels. Really don't think I'd like to go through that again. I don't know why the universe wants me dead, but here are 2 of mine. I've got an arrhythmia and have had it at least since I was 11. Basically, my heart messes up and misses a beat, then overcorrects and goes into tachycardia. I faint and am extraordinarily bad at a lot of cardio, but I love running. When I was 13, I hadn't yet been diagnosed. I ran track and had been for 3 years, sprints and jumps. My coach wanted me to try the mile at a meet, and I agreed to try. At the meet, I wasn't able to finish because my chest pain got so bad. That night, I wasn't able to breathe well and felt like my chest was simultaneously exploding and being crushed. My mom said it must be an asthma attack, which I hadn't had before, and I was up all night. Actually, that was my first cardiac event. So, a mild heart attack at 13, struggling to breathe, terrified, and in intense pain. Before that, when I was very young, my aunt was watching me as I played outside in the rain. It was stormy. All I remember is running around and then waking up super tingly on the ground, like my whole body had fallen asleep. Either I or the ground next to me had been hit by lightning. My aunt panicked and still hasn't ever told my mom or dad, and I never have either. As 20-year-old American, I was riding a motorcycle across Vietnam like the Top Gear special. I stupidly decided that riding on Highway 1, the main trucking highway from HCM City to Hanoi, at night, in the rain was a good idea. At one point I was riding and I could see 2 headlights in the oncoming lane blinding me with their high beams. Then all of a sudden the 2 headlights turn into 4 as a bus is passing the truck coming head-on at me. I try my best to swerve off onto the shoulder, but I'm being blinded by both their high beams and I have rain hitting me in my eyes. I land up getting over just enough and the bus came probably an inch from hitting me head-on. In 2017, when I was 12, I almost drowned to death. It is the worst way to die. The helpless feeling is awful. 1 minute I was full panic mode, trying to breathe, but every breath was water. I felt like I was burning. Then. It didn't feel peaceful, but it felt like I was ready. The whole thing that says you see all your memories before dying is true. I just had this bad feeling knowing that my parents wouldn't have seen me grow up, couldn't see my friends anymore, etc. I suddenly heard a loud sound like bzzz and everything went black. Somehow someone saw me and saved me. The bad thing is that I've had to cope with depression since then. I'm better nowadays, but the helpless feeling just never left me after I almost drowned. One thing I've never said to anyone is that I saw an elf while drowning. I know, weird as hell, but I think it was just my mind making up stuff for the lack of oxygen. TL/doctor, I declined an indoor bedroom in favor of sleeping outside. Whole family died of a gas leak that night. A few years ago I was staying at a stranger's home in the western US, situation like an Airbnb, but a different company. I actually slept in a camper outside of the main house, but could use the kitchen and bathroom inside. At one point they offered to let me sleep inside, they had an extra bedroom. I just enjoy sleeping out, so I declined. That night, there was a gas leak in the house and the entire family died. I actually knocked on the door that morning, and had to leave because nobody would let me in. That night the police were there and told me to leave. I've done a lot of really dangerous things, but I think this is the event that most haunts me. Man, this still haunts me. So my friend invited me to their house, and we were just chilling when he asks me if I wanted to see his snake. I was like, yeah sure, because 9-year-old me thought snakes were cool and edgy. He takes me out to his shed and there's a, maybe 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters and a meter deep, plastic container. I knew pretty much nothing about snakes, being 9 and very into sharks and the ocean. So he hands me this plastic container with holes poked in the top and tells me a snake is in it. I hesitantly pull off the top because the only other person I know who has a snake has a proper home for it, not a plastic box in a shed, and even then I was weary. I open it and a really fucking pissed eastern diamondback rattlesnake jumps out at me, and I get bit on my left shoulder. The kid runs inside and calls an ambulance while I sit there in agony and the snake slithers away. I got the anti-venom I needed, and his mother confirmed she never bought a snake for him, and to this day I still have no clue how he managed to trap one in a plastic box and keep it in his shed. I was living in Africa at the time. I was staying with a family native to that country, but they were connected with the group I was with. You know, to get the real way of living over there. Anyways, every house is gated off with 12 feet gates and fences around their properties. I had come home one evening. Later, like 2 a.m. I was picking up a friend from the airport. I enter through the gate door. I had a key obviously. The walk from the gate to the fence door is about 100 feet, 33 yards or 30.48 meters. Well, they have guard dogs. At first, they barked to let the homeowner know someone was there. Now mind you, I had only lived there for like 3 weeks. So they knew me, but not well. I start walking slowly. The dogs get more aggressive with their barks. I know from early childhood, not to run. To not show fear. I'm slowly walking. Keeping my hands up. I'm about halfway at this point. They are now starting to sniff and bite at my pant legs. What felt like a full-on, American, football field length away. I finally reached my door. Locked of course. They're getting more aggressive. I'm like, is this how I die? To dogs eating me in Africa? I fumbled my keys around and not trying to drop them. Unlock the door, and get inside. I did not sleep. I was so happy just to be breathing and alive. I used to go out once a week with friends to get lunch or dinner at a sushi bar and just shoot the shit with the boys. One week as usual we went out and all ordered several types of sushi and shared per usual. Fast forward to that evening after I go to bed with a full belly and a smile. I awake pre-dawn to hives covering the majority of my body and my throat swelling shut. Literally crawled to my parents' room and collapsed. Woke up at the ER. I scheduled an allergy test and swore off fish, which I was not allergic to previously, crying face. Had a pneumothorax last month. First one. Went to emergency at local hospital, full of COVID-19 potential cases. Doctors told me they had to operate me next day, and when I asked if there was any risk they told me, absolutely none. We never missed an operation like that and we'll be doing it with the help of the latest technology scanner. It will take us like 10 minutes and you'll feel immediately relieved/better after. They gave me a lot of morphine for the pain and, in the morning, during the operation I heard something like, Hoshite. He's doing an hemorrhage. We need to send him to this other clinic in emergency. Kept me waiting 1h30 while internally bleeding and suffocating in my own blood before the ambulance arrived for the transfer. The doc at the second hospital yelled I want him in the block immediately when I arrived. And he saved my life, I guess. And that's a very summarized version or what happened. Sorry for my English mistakes, I'm French. Well, this is potentially a little off topic. It's not so much the closest I've been to death, but the most danger I've ever put myself in. I climbed up a mountain peak, the Chimney Tops in Tennessee. It's around 200 feet of exposed rock on the top of a mountain, and it was a hot sunny summer day. My hands started to burn from the rock, and I almost slipped off. It curves a little bit, so for most of the climb, you're over a pretty long fall then a tumble to certain death. Once the adrenaline kicked in though, I felt one of the strangest sensations I've ever felt. I was feeling pain, but it didn't bother me. Everything got quiet and I could feel my heartbeat. I heard the soft wind blowing past my ears, and I became hyper-focused on the current task of climbing up this rock face. I was able to climb all the way to the top, and then all the way back down a few minutes later. The adrenaline rush gradually faded as I walked down the trail. Eventually I had to stop and dip my hands in a cold mountain stream along the trail because the pain of the burns was starting to get to me. I had mild burns on my hands from the rocks, but a few burns were worth it for the view alone, and survival. I almost drowned while tubing down a river. I was in college when this happened. Was with friends who were pretty drunk off tequila, but I was sober. I was swimming the river because we only had 3 tubes and there was 5 of us, and I was just ahead of my friends in the tubes. We were just about to reach the end, when the back of my bikini top got caught on a stick in the river. As I was scrambling to get it unhooked, my friend's tubes floated on top of me and got stuck on the same log/stick, holding me under the water. I began to freak out more, causing the stick to tear up my back pretty badly. All I can remember thinking was my best friend's name, who was also sober, and hoping that she had noticed what happened as she was swimming behind the tubes. Maybe a minute went by and my lungs were really burning before my best friend came to my rescue and untied the back of my bikini, freeing me. I just remember swimming madly to the dock at the end of the river, like 15 feet away, and jumping out of the water onto land. I coughed up so much water, and as soon as I was out of the water my friends screamed at the blood dripping down my back, even though I couldn't feel the cuts at that point due to all the adrenaline. Needless to say, I'm not close with my friends who were drunk that day, but I do credit my best friend with saving my life. I still have a couple scars on my back from the branch. Also that bikini was ruined frown, but I'm glad to be alive.